There have been a couple of these characters who will go out there and start writing books about things they've never actually accomplished by mimicking the words, like seven-figure lifestyle, when they're living in their mom's basement and they never made more than $40,000. People know that's out there now. And because of that, the amount of skepticism and doubt for an online marketing campaign for coaching is just so paramount. And I don't blame them.
Welcome to Durand on Demand. We have a few special guests here. It's kind of an intimate audience, Dave. And it's pretty cool because we're not only recording content, but we're also addressing a lot of the questions that most of the online entrepreneurial landscape has.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of these people, as you know, Dave, are solopreneurs.
Yes.
And we've run across a ton of them. And so we're kind of just having this.
And let's introduce our guests.
Yeah. All right. So we got Andrew behind the camera here. We got Jordan behind the camera here. These guys are rock stars in the e-commerce space and obviously in the content creation space here. And, you know, they're holding the camera, so you can't really see them right now.
And they're actually the authentic people in that space.
Yes.
And I can get to what that means later.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dave, you know, one of the things that we've learned throughout the launch of Leading Giants is that as a whole, the online coaching space is saturated with people who say that they know how to do things, and you kind of peel back the layers and you find out that it may or may not be a Ponzi scheme. What are your thoughts on that?
Actually, we're getting to it right now. So the difference between Jordan and Austin is that what these guys do, and I think starting with what's good contrasts what is bad. So you guys just came from Miami. You've got this like 18-year-old hotshot online who's got like $12 million in revenue going by having a drop ship company. So, you know, he's got just 2 employees. He's got some pretty decent margins. You guys are experts in saying, hey, here's how you position your business a little bit different. You can give them some TikTok advice. There's the merger, of course, or at least the agreement between Amazon and TikTok that allows for that to actually take it to a higher level with Prime. So you guys understand this sort of thing, and that's a good thing. You help people build real companies. Now, I'm sure there's probably somebody out there's an influencer there, and you can help give them a click funnel, all that kind of stuff too. But the thing that separates your business from what's mostly out there in the coaching industry, and Nico, you and I, we've learned this a lot, is there's a million people out there who are online coaches, and all they do is coach people to be online coaches who coach people to be online coaches. It literally is like looking in 2 mirrors that go back and forth forever. It is like a Ponzi scheme. And so it dilutes the marketplace. Why? In order to be an online coach that teaches people how to be an online coach, you don't actually have to know anything about life or coaching or business. You just need to know how to get people to click on clickbait and then spend money on some sort of like false hope. So it doesn't really produce anything. But a really good coach, business coach or life coach, is a person who can take anyone, the person who has 1 HVAC truck and they want to expand that to 100. Or the plumbing company that I just saw, no, it was actually HVAC that just sold for $300 million just a couple miles north of here, that started small and they started building this great thing. So what's happened, and you guys have probably bumped into this, we've had like these online influencer people who we've contracted to say, help us understand this a little bit. And this is when we kind of discovered this whole idea that, wait, you don't actually teach people how to do anything but that? And some of these online influencers who purport to have this great result, then reveal the dark side of their business, which is that they're struggling to actually keep profits, and that when they promoted they had $10,000 a month in revenue or $50,000 a month in revenue. They got it one time, then it all went away. They couldn't repeat the process, or they did get it, and now they needed to hire an internal staff to actually scale the business according to what they were doing, and they didn't know how to recruit, train, lead, or develop people. And that's the key aspect of this. So truly, if a person is going to be effective in coaching, they have to, and by the way, they can't do it out of theory. They have to have known what it's like to recruit, train, build, and lead a substantial team. Not just like, oh, I'm a great leader. Really, tell me about that. Well, this one job that I had, there were 3 people that reported to me. That doesn't make you a great leader. It makes you a pretty decent manager of 3 people, likely, but a great leader builds things beyond their physical reach into a realm where there's like this shockwave of their influence that goes so far beyond them, they later have people come up to them and talk about the impact that made, but they don't even know them. And to a certain degree, they have line authority through that. Like, in other words, they don't just have influence authority like Carly B, is that her name? Is that what it is? I don't even, Carly B. What? Cardi B? Yeah, I don't mind I really don't mind that. In fact, I like that I didn't get that wrong. If you could please not edit that to show how unimportant that is to me. But that type of influencer, because I've seen one or two interviews. Really, anybody would take advice from a person who whatever. I'll just stop there. Okay. What the point would be that she can be influential as an influencer because she sells music and people know who they are and people want to be affiliated and associated with a famous person, or they think that if they act like that person, they are that person. But that's not practical, and really only superficial people think that way. Even though deep people may have an attraction. There's a lot of music artists that I love, by the way, and hey, that's a cool hat. Yeah. So that's a real thing, and there's a natural side to that can be good. But that doesn't mean you're going to take all their advice on everything else. What have they actually built, and are they any good at it? And so, Nika, we've talked about this before. There have been people in my organizations who have had the short stay and maybe had short-term sprinting success, but never really got a chance to bake. But they loved being around the concepts. They loved being around the vibe that comes from the becoming the best version of yourself idea, right? Becoming a giant. And they're like, oh my gosh, I like what he's saying, and I want to be recognized. Sounds a little egocentric, but this is really what it came down to. I want to be recognized like Dave is being recognized for influencing these people for a better life, because I can hear that they're appreciative that he has given them something they haven't had previously, and I want that recognition. So then they'll spin off, and there have been a couple of these characters who will go out there and start writing books about things they've never actually accomplished by mimicking the words, a 7-figure lifestyle, when they're living in their mom's basement and they never made more than $40,000. I mean, people know that's out there now. And because of that, the amount of skepticism and doubt for an online marketing campaign for coaching is just so paramount. And I don't blame them. Some people would say things like, you've seen this in some of the YouTube comments, well, I should listen to you. You know what? Maybe you shouldn't. Well, just go listen to whoever you want to. I'm not going to, in other words, the argument for why you should be skeptical with online influencers is so great that I agree with it. And if I'm somehow thrown into the soup of skeptical because of that, I'm totally okay with that. I am also skeptical. But it is a little difficult because I also know that I'm not that. I've built many companies, small businesses, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, $10 to $40 million, and then companies with over $1 billion in collective sales that I've sold for over $100 million. So I've done all of those things, and I've led a lot of people. But just saying that doesn't mean anything. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm building a sales force. And that sales force will go out there and be able to articulate the actual history of what's taking place, and that you can build a culture within that sales team, because these are people then who are now living by that principle, and they are beyond a sales team. I'm going to build a coaching team. I'm going to build associate coaches and coaches that will be certified in Leading Giants coaching, and they're going to know how to help people go to the next level. And together, we're going to build greatness. I mean, we're going to build an army of giants and daily slay dragons like you haven't, like nothing before. And you know what's so cool about it too is most people feel like they're on an island. They're alone in that. Whenever I've built my companies, we have a series of conference calls that are just audio calls that will sometimes be 15 minutes a couple times a week. But we'll have hundreds, if not thousands of people within the organization on those calls. And all it does is remind them, I'm with a group here. I've got like a community. Like I've got my tribe of people who I can relate to. We're all trying to work toward the same thing. And if that's the case, it pulls them together. So if you're an independent business owner, but you have that community, and you've got these aligned goals, and you know how to actually get to them in a non-complex manner. In fact, one time I did a speech called How to Motivate Yourself So You Don't Need a Guy Like Me. It was designed to be the only one-time speech anyone would ever give, because if you pull it off, you don't need the guy to come back, right? Whereas most motivational speakers are like, hey, the next secret is... And it's always like, okay, well, is there really a next secret? So what I want to do is I want to empower a person to, on their own, move forward and get great results. So it's like the concept of 3, right? Most employees have no idea whether or not they're doing good work or not. And they want to know. And the number one concern that an employee has, and entrepreneurs have this too, but they don't have a person to tell them, right? So they wonder, am I doing a good job today? And that's their anxiety. And sometimes they act like they don't like the company, or they act dissatisfied with the work or their coworker, when in reality, none of that is actually true, but it's like their agitation with not knowing, am I doing good? And so, first of all, great leaders should let people know. I mean, great leaders reaffirm, correct, and move forward. In fact, if you were to ask me, what is the number one reason that a person with already an established team cannot lead effectively? It's accountability. They don't know how to hold people accountable. They don't know how to measure accountability. And if they do measure something and the person is off on what they're supposed to do, they don't know how to correct it in a way that inspires and not drives the person away. They don't know how to do that. Accountability, that's that one word. In our programs, we teach people how to measure, how to identify, how to lead people through accountability circumstances, even if things are difficult, so that at the end of the circumstance, even if there's correction, the person feels better about it. Like, I've literally had people say, Dave, like, I've never felt so good after a beating like that before. These are some of my colleagues who I know well, and it's not a beating, but like I've had to take them a bit to the woodshed, like at halftime, an NFL coach, but they feel cared for, they feel respected, they feel supported, and through that, they come out of it feeling stronger and like more guided, But that's a skill, and people have to know how to do it. And so I build all of that because that matters. But that lack of accountability and knowing how to do it starts with very basic things. Like if you 3, said, hey, let's start a new role, I would say, okay, now in this role, I just want you to know something. There are 3 main things you need to do in this role every single day. And if you do these 3 things, you are getting an A+. You wouldn't need to ask me, how am I doing? You would know that if I did all 3 of these, I would notice it, and I would be like checking it off the list at the end of the day saying, awesome work. Now, also, I would be a fool not to tell you that I noticed it and you're doing awesome. So you would get that from me. But you need to know that on that day that I'm gone, or I'm on vacation, or I'm tied up in meetings, that when I see that report, I'm going to go, you rock. Now, if you're doing 2.5 of them, I would go, if you're doing 2 of them, we have a problem, because now you're not being held accountable and you're not holding yourself accountable to those standards. Now, the mistake that leaders make, though, is that they give them unrealistic goals. So they're like, you need to do these 3 things, but there's no time to do those 3 things. But here's the interesting caveat, and this is the thing that mixes into this, is that if you have 10 people and you give them all those 3 things to do, and 9 out of 10 are getting those 3 things done, but the 10th one is loud and maybe popular, and they're not getting them done, they start to try to influence you. They say, well, you can't do it. It's impossible. And the weak leader now reduces the standards to meet that of the lower performer, which irritates everybody else, and it only creates a culture of more lower and more lower. See, there's a saying that you've heard, Nico, many times. If you give somebody something for nothing, they're going to want more for less. Well, if you reduce the standards for no reasons when other people are doing it, they're going to ask for the standards to be reduced again. Because the number one goal of employees in bad cultures is to convince you that they are overworked and underpaid, and that what you're asking them to do is impossible, because they want to reduce their burden. But they never are satisfied, actually. Never. If you give in to that, you've created a culture of such intense weakness that nobody wants to stick around anymore. It is true that some people leave jobs because they're overworked and abused in what they do. That should not happen. But more people leave their work because they're not challenged by it. So if we take away the challenge, they need to go someplace and feel challenged. And so this is what I show people how to do. You cannot give what you don't have. So the bottom line is, so here's the thing about it. You say, oh, I want to take a financial seminar, okay? Or I'm an entrepreneur. I want to get my finances in order. Or I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to take a digital marketing class so we can figure out marketing. Or we're going to figure out better distribution. We're going to Kaizen our business, and we're going to be more efficient. None of that will matter if you as a leader don't have your act together. If you are not a giant, if you don't know how to slay dragons, you might get all the digital results you want, but you can't keep up with the business. That's why some of these other people that we've talked about before that get some of these distribution centers going, they have a legitimate business going or an online business, they now need to scale it with actual human beings in order to grow the business, and they don't know how to recruit, train, attract, and develop people to get these concepts in order. This also happens in our personal life. Separate from the idea of being an entrepreneur. So if you want to slay dragons in the corporate world, okay, do it. You know, one of the things that online influencers must always do now is they basically say, if you're not an entrepreneur, you're nothing. That drives me crazy. And by the way, I've built my livelihood and wealth through entrepreneurship. But I am so glad not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. My father, who I respect more than anyone else, was never an entrepreneur. And he would be the world's worst entrepreneur, even though he's the greatest man I know. And when people kind of like do this value association to if you're willing to be an entrepreneur, you're good, and if you're not, you're bad, and you're a coward if you this and that, that's just nonsense. It's ridiculous. In fact, Dave Ramsey recently had he published the top 5 professions of millionaires. Entrepreneurs was not on there. School teachers was. Interesting thing. And so why? Because if you have a particular discipline, you can get someplace. So the reason that I want to help people is because most people, their lives are in chaos. They literally are all over the place. So they say, you know what? I would go on that diet. I just don't have the self-discipline. I would believe those things that I know in my core that I'm supposed to believe spiritually, but I would have to change my lifestyle, and I would rather not do that. They say, you know what, I know I could be a better husband or a better wife, but I'm just too tired at the end of the day, and so I don't do those extra things. They say, well, I could build wealth, I know how, but you know what, I like spending the extra $20 at Starbucks every day. And they have these tiny little things that all come back to one thing. They themselves, they have something out of order in their lives at the core. And the Leading Giants program is something that is so cool because, see, instead of running around playing whack-a-mole, okay, hey, here's a financial seminar, boom, here's how you make millions of dollars. Well, they can't. Why? They have no self-control. Okay, I showed you, I literally gave you the scrolls on making millions, but you have no self-control, so you couldn't do it. Hey, I gave you the scrolls on how to be in peak physical fitness. You have no self-control, so you couldn't do it. I gave you the scrolls on how to be an entrepreneur. You have no self-control, so you couldn't do it. Hey, you've got this amazing wife, but you have no self-control. You ruined that, okay? So I want to solve everything right at the core, because if I solve it at the core, you know what's really cool? I don't have to give you most of the seminars. You just start figuring them out. But I will give them to you anyway, because they coincide with reinforcing the things that we're actually doing. And so that's, like, to me, one of the most important things that we can possibly pull off.
You talked about this a little bit already, but how important is that relationship between the personal development side and the business? Because I think you hit on this a few times, but I think that people underestimate how important that actually is. Mm-hmm. You know, I think oftentimes I've heard this saying, which has become more and more true for me, is personal problems manifest in your business. Mm-hmm. How true has that been for you in your life? Maybe you can give a few examples on how you overcame them, mm-hmm. and why that's such an important focus to have.
So I want to dice this up a little, because this is a very important thing for people to understand by way of leadership and in their own personal life. Having occasional chaos in everyone's life is inevitable. You might have a death in the family. You can only control 50% of your relationships. Somebody is awry in that. You're responsible with your money, but some huge chaotic chaos comes in that you have no control over. You're building a business and a weird, strange sweep of economy comes through like COVID did or something like that. So this is not about a bunch of perfect people living a perfect life. It's about having the stones. It's about having the strength to get through those things so those personal issues don't seep into your professional life. So I have had times where I have gone through, and I think this is important to know too. I mean, like, I've had times in life that we're living hell. They're like, people are like, well, Dave, you don't understand. You don't know what it's like to go through a divorce. You don't know what it's like to go through a death. I went through a divorce, and I had a wife publicly murdered. I mean, I've gone through a lot of different things. I have struggled with physical pain at an enormous level. And I don't feel like I'm unique in these things. I mean, some of it is a little extreme, but for the most part, you take any of the challenges I've been through in my life, and people have their own equivalent challenges. That's why I always say, like, if you have a headache and it's a very low-grade headache, and I have a migraine or a cluster headache, who has the worst headache? It's an irrelevant question. It's your headache and my headache, all right? And we deal with them differently. So this is not about go out and recruit and train or be the perfect person in this perfect life. It's about managing the circumstance when it happens. It's about having the strength to do that. And this is the key to it. Because why? Because if a healthy person now gets a knee injury, the healthy person who has good habits and has built fortitude will rehab that knee and get back to normal. Whereas most people, literally 90% of people will say, now I have a bad knee. Kind of have an excuse to be out of shape. I'd be as in shape as that guy right there, but my knee's bad. I'm not like him. And people love to be unique in their victimhood. And the more they do that, the more they reduce their ability to have something great. So, to more directly answer your question, because this is important, it has everything to do with it. When I was young, I would see a person and I would think, wow, they're super talented. They're very gregarious. They're like dynamic. They're attractive. They're fun to be around. They're great to have at a meeting. And then I'd hear things about their personal life. They're awry. But I'd still think, but all of those things are going to make them effective. Nope. They always perform at the lowest level of virtue that they live outside of the business. That always comes into play. Now, it doesn't always happen at the same speed, and that's what confuses people. Because right now I have people going, well, that's not true, because I know somebody who is like an addict or this or that, or was like running around on their spouse, and they're doing fine for now, but eventually it always catches up. And those people are the exception. It's like the person that smoked for 75 years but lived to 115. Okay, they did, but that's not your health plan now. Don't go for it. Use the principles that are at large. So that's why I would say it has everything to do with it. I do not hire people based on their resume first and based on their intellect first. I hire them first on their virtue. Now, all things being equal, I want all of it, okay? And I'm also not talking about their self-righteousness. You know, I'm a dedicated Catholic, and somebody said one time, well, they were trying to argue for the fact that that would be the primary qualifier for hiring people. And I was like, no. Give me somebody who doesn't believe anything the Catholic Church believes, but is the absolute best, safest, most proven pilot who does love people, that they would have in common, by the way, with the Catholics, okay, that loves people but doesn't believe anything Catholic, and that's my pilot. That's the pilot I want. Same with the surgeon. Now, all things being equal, it would be really nice if they had all of the core beliefs that I had and all the rest of that. But the bottom line is, those natural virtues that drive great results are the thing that matter most. Now, I know that I would have some of my Catholic friends kind of attacking this, saying, well, are you saying that faith isn't the most important thing? It absolutely is to me. I mean, I woke up and prayed before I got started. I went to Mass after that, and then I did a holy hour. If you're Catholic, you know what that means. Before I actually came to work, it is absolutely the most important thing to me. But we can start to lose perspective on the vastness and the beauty of the world and all of the amazing people that come from all different walks of life that have different ideas and thoughts. But the universal things that we have are virtue. That's the core thing that I have. The cardinal virtues are prudence, which is the mastery of decision-making. These are not religious, by the way. The word cardinal sometimes confuses people. It's the Latin word for hinge. It means that all virtues hinge on this. But prudence is the first one, the mastery of decision-making. The next one is justice. The next one is fortitude. And then the last one after that is temperance. So what does this look like? It's very simple. No one has ever said, you know what I loved about working there? Nobody could make a good decision. But they do say, what I loved about working there is they were great decision makers. Well, that is a natural virtue, okay? That is a virtue that every single person, no matter what their background is, on a natural level has access to by building it as a habit. See, I would not say, well, if you're a Catholic, you're going to be a stronger weightlifter. I mean, maybe there would be something about the fullness of that would bring it to a higher end. But at the end of the day, you know you're going to make you a great weightlifter? Eating right and lifting weights. That's what's going to make you better at it. Those are natural virtues that get you to do that. And that's what builds that great team. So you've got that. And then there's justice. Words never said. You know what I loved about working there? They were totally unfair to me. Nobody's ever said that. So we need to teach people how to be just because most people don't know it. When you hear people's idea of justice, oh my goodness, they literally do not get it. It is way whacked out. But you can't have justice without prudence. And that's the actual interesting thing, that these cardinal virtues build on each other. Can you imagine a person that is unable to make good decisions as a judge, and now they need to deliver to you justice? They can't. Good decisions are required in justice. And then there's fortitude. Fortitude is like stick-to-itiveness, right? It's courage. It's suffering well in the times of challenge. Well, we all know what that is. That's why you click on The Grind, and there's going to be 15 videos that show up where people are like, I like to grind it out, no pain, no gain. They always talk about this stuff. Like in human nature, we know that to be real. I want to find a person who make great decisions, therefore prudent, who has a sense of justice, who can grind things out, and then ultimately speaking, you have temperance. What is that? You know how to hold your tongue. You've got all these temptations in the world. And this is where a lot of people fall. Even if they have prudence, they have justice, and they have fortitude. Now, through prudence, justice, and fortitude, they can have abundance. But when they have abundance, some things just get a little bit too hard to resist. If you know what I'm saying, and that becomes a problem for them, not just those things, but other things too. There are lower faculty things that get in the way, where all of a sudden, like, they did all these amazing things to do well in life, but now they reduce themselves to basically physical pleasure. And then what begins to happen is they become softer, so they have no fortitude. They have to stay into their addictions, and so they now have no justice, and they have the inability to make good decisions, so they unravel everything back. So that's what I look for first and foremost. Now again, all those things, plus a great resume, all those good things, plus a high intellect, all those good things, plus the right, Myers-Briggs temperament test or something like that, that's the best combination. But that's what I look for first.